Hi, this is Pam, and I'm reading today from Ancient Map for Modern Birth, Chapter 7, The Mother. And in Ancient Map, I try to present 6 archetypes of birth as part of the heroic journey, and one of them was the mother. So there's an archetypal mother, and there's a personal mother. For those of you who are not familiar or sure about this archetypal mother, I'll just say that an archetype is a universal pattern in all humans that has been imprinted on us over millennia. So we recognize in ourselves and in others the archetypal mother when we see it, when we feel it, when we express it. And the archetypal mother is a dynamic, ancient archetype, so it's very complex. There's also the personal mother, which is forever changing. It's not a universal or permanent pattern, which I'll be talking about shortly, because in every generation, every society, what's expected of mothers and motherhood changes, which is one of the reasons it makes knowing what to do or what's expected for new mothers very difficult. So let's begin with the reading of the chapter 7 as it was written in the book. And then I'm going to go into a new commentary about the idealized mother. The relationship of mother and child is so simple that every peasant woman takes it for granted, so full of emotional content that artists, poets, and storytellers have been lured by it in every age. And that passage was written by M. Esther Harding in her book, The Way of All Women. You are on the threshold between being a daughter and becoming a mother. Realizing yourself as a mother might dawn on you the moment you see your positive pregnancy test, or when you feel the baby kick for the first time, or maybe when you first hold and comfort your child. Throughout the childbearing year, you are evolving from an archetypal maiden to a child mother. It takes a while, maybe even 3 years or more, to become a mature mother, to feel you're a mature mother. Becoming a mother is one of the most complex and profoundly life-changing transformations, so it often unfolds gradually over time. The mother archetype is ancient, universal, and complex. She is found in cave art, fairy tales, mythology, religion, literature, and art. The mother, with capital M, in all her manifestations, is already within you when you are imagining what being a mother will be like, or wondering if you're having a boy or girl, making lists and names. So you have many expressions of being the mother, both the archetypal and the personal mother. So you're already discovering mixed messages about becoming a mother. And at the same time, there are hundreds of books, websites, and experts telling you the right way to mother, to feel, to be. So maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle. There'll be some instinctive or spontaneous responses, and maybe some of your ideas will be shaped by the advice you get from others. But continue listening to your inner voice. And this task that begins in pregnancy, of listening to your inner voice and balancing that with maybe advice you get from others, is going to follow you throughout your lifelong relationship with your child. So we want to talk about the idealized mother. There's an author and psychiatrist, Anne Daly, who wrote a very good book. It's called Inventing Motherhood, The Consequences of an Idealized Mother, or Idealizing Motherhood. It was published in 1983, and I recommend it because she explains the evolution of the definition of mother, of the evolution of our expectations of mother and motherhood. And as I said, it's redefined nearly every generation, so new mothers don't even always know what is best. It's different from what their own mothers did. And this rapid change can be very unsettling. But idealizing the mother or motherhood can lead to emotional distress and catastrophic consequences, as you probably know. And this idealization began during the Victorian times, and it's alive and well today. Society is participating in idealizing women and mothers, and by, maybe overly emphasizing the importance of mothers by churches and government, and yet little is done to help them transition into motherhood or fulfill that complex role while trying to work and also become self-realized. We know that when things go wrong, whether it's with fetal development or health of the newborn, or with children, even or young adults, we know that mothers are blamed by society, by the courts, by other mothers. Fathers are not blamed so much. Fathers are considered people, but mothers have been relegated to this idealized level of perfection and responsibility. So when something goes wrong, they are blamed. And this can cause an underlying anxiety, kind of a hypervigilance, second guessing, neglect of our own interests, trying to create the perfect environment to create a near perfect human. Yikes. There's a lot of pressure here. And Paula Kaplan's book, she wrote a book called, two books. She had the Don't Blame Mother, which was published in 1990, and then she has another edition called The New Don't Blame Mother, Mending the Mother-Daughter Relationship. Excellent books. That was published in 2000. And she talks about the pervasiveness of mother blaming by patriarchy, by the courts, psychology, by other women. Even daughters blame their mothers, and therefore when daughters blame their mothers and they become a mother, they begin to blame themselves. It's a generational pattern, and it is so pervasive, this mother blaming, that we're not even aware of it. In her book, she gives many wonderful examples. So we want to become aware of mother blaming, of ourselves, of other mothers, and realize that it's not personal, it's cultural. It's in the environment. It's on the bumper stickers. It's on sitcoms. What happens is that we become anxious about being needy or asking for help, not being independent, intuitive. Are we available enough? Are we neglecting the child? Are we being selfless enough? Is motherhood, just being a caregiver, a saint, self-sacrificing? And there's guilt and shame, and it's very complex because the role of mothers has been idealized. And so one of your tasks in pregnancy, should you choose to accept this as part of your preparation, not just to give birth to a baby, but you're preparing for a profound transition from being an independent human or a maiden, whatever you want to think of yourself as, into this role of a mother. Now, the word mother and motherhood is generally considered feminine. It's related to the female, but men can also be nurturing and manifest all of the attributes of a mother. It's just easier to, in a talk like this, to refer to mothers, without saying mothers and fathers, because it can become so confusing. We don't know what we're talking about. But when a man takes on the attributes of the self-sacrificing, guilty mother role, it is equally detrimental. So having said that, in Paula Kaplan's book, she has an exercise called Humanizing Your Mother. Now, I did this um, in the 1990s, and it was extremely helpful to me in mending my relationship with my mother. So, in Ancient Map, I write, even if your relationship with your mother was not or is not what you would have liked it to be, or in becoming a mother yourself, it is beneficial to connect with even the finest thread of wholesome mothering you experience with your mother. Now, to do this, it may help you to supply the missing phrase in this sentence. One thing my mother did that I treasure and that I want to continue doing as a mother with my child is, and fill in the blank. So if your mother did something like leaving out milk and cookies for you after school, and it was just something you kind of treasure, even though there were lots of other things that you would not want to carry on or repeat. You want to embrace that she is a human being who is doing her best with her evolution up until that point and all the other stresses of her life and the mothering she did or didn't receive and all of that. And if there's any tradition, if you will, or that you would like to, continue, this humanizes your mother and it helps you find some good in her, which means you'll find some good in you. But to say that you want to never be like your mother or never do anything like your mother is to blame your mother, which means it's a setup for you to idealize motherhood, and it's a setup that you will fail because it's impossible to be a perfect mother. Being a mother is a relationship. Now, I used to teach a class called The Good Enough Mother, and that was years ago, and it was so great. There was a British pediatrician, D.W. Winnicott, who coined this phrase, the good enough mother, in his book called Playing and Reality. What he observed was that a new mom gives her devoted attention to her newborn. She's very devoted. She tries to meet every need. She sacrifices her own needs, her sleep. Sometimes she sacrifices eating or showering to attend to the baby's needs immediately. And during this phase, the baby also experiences its mother as an extension of himself, not as a separate being. And this is developmentally cool. It's how it is. But over time, a good enough mother who knows herself, who's in balance, begins to allow the infant to wait a little while she showers or she cooks. She allows a little bit of frustration, which allows the baby to develop patience and trust that even if it cries for a few minutes, it will get its needs met. Now, a good enough mother doesn't let the baby cry for too long, but just a little while to get her own needs met. And this allows the baby to develop a sense of other, a sense of time, a sense of reality, trust, and not rather than cultivating an unrealistic expectation that its every need will be immediately sensed and met, which is, not really healthy for a human being. So a good mom has a good enough consciousness. She has a balanced response to what needs to happen and what can wait. And her response is constantly evolving, again, from the newborn, which she's immediately and constantly attentive to a newborn's needs, to becoming more gradually attentive, selectively attentive. Now, what I did in my class years ago is I told moms, because I was telling myself, that a good mom or good enough mom doesn't need to strive to get an A plus every day on her mothering report card. Some days she'll get a B. Some days she'll get a C, even a D. I've gotten incomplete. Sometimes I spaced out and forgot to pick up my kid from the daycare and I got a phone call. It was very embarrassing, but I knew that it didn't make me a terrible mother and my child was not going to develop an abandonment complex because the majority of the time I was consistent, predictable, reliable. And if you look at all of the experiences over a year or 2 years or 10 years or 18 years, one or two little mistakes are not likely to dominate the consciousness of a child. We could argue that, I suppose. But on faith, on good faith, I'd like to suggest that if we strive to get a B or B minus as a mom, we'll relax a little more and be more loving to ourselves. And as we are more loving to ourselves, we're also showing our child to accept that mothers are not an idealized saint at our service, beck and call, and that they still love us even though they have their quirks and their personality tendencies and so forth and so on. So you want to see yourself as a good enough mother or a good mother. During pregnancy, you are gestating your mother self. And in my next video, you'll be getting next week, I'm going to talk to you about the patient archetype, which is a dominant archetype that you'll be, the culture wants you to develop during pregnancy is the patient archetype. I'm suggesting you start developing your mother self. To many mothers, as when I was a midwife, the baby would be born and they would say, oh my God, now what do I do? I don't really know how to be a mom. And this would break my heart. And that's when I began to realize that one of the responsibilities of good midwifery is not to prepare for the day of birth, but also for the consciousness as a mother, the self-confidence, ideas, maybe the beginning skills that mothers need to have, which might be how to swaddle a baby, how to diaper a baby, how to soothe a baby, and other things. So during pregnancy, one of your tasks on this journey might be to journal, draw, or have thoughtful discussions with friends, or maybe your mother, aunts, or grandmother, to talk about the evolving and emerging mother self. Now, I think making drawings can be very helpful, because it goes beyond words, and helps you express what's unconscious. And while you're drawing, it allows you to, go a little deeper, and you find symbols and memories, and things start to come up, especially if you do it to maybe some music that helps you become reflective. If you make a drawing of seeing yourself as a mother or the mother you want to be, I'm going to recommend first that you refrain from doing two things. One is avoid making an ambiguous or abstract symbol like a happy face or a big fat red heart, because that doesn't mean anything. It's almost like a cop-out, and there's nothing to really say about it. It doesn't go anywhere. You didn't take a risk. You want to dare to express your self-image. And it's going to change. It's not set in stone because you created a self-image during your gestation of motherhood, but it allows you to see a human form doing a human activity. And you want to include as many details and ideas, symbols to express the feelings or intentions that you are having in that moment more fully. Okay, so again, don't make some abstract, meaningless symbol. And the other thing is to avoid making an idealized mother image, one that is, again, not like my mother. In other words, something perfect. You want to really think about being a real person in a real relationship with a child that you'll be teaching and sharing a life with. And what that relationship, as special as it is also somewhat ordinary. Now, there's another thing you can do. When I was working with moms in my Good Enough Mom group, we would make a continuum, like a line on a long piece of paper. And in the middle, we would put good enough mom. And that would be we would start with a good enough mom image and put as many symbols as we could. I'm going to come back to this in just a minute, but I want to give you the kind of the big picture. And on one end of the continuum, it would be the idealized, perfect, um, you know, make your baby neurotic kind of probably mom, just an idealized, over the top, perfect mom. And on the other end, a neglectful mom. The thing you're really going to try to avoid. But in truth, you should also try to avoid being too perfect, because that puts a lot of pressure on kids, that they also have to be perfect and please you and not make any mistakes. Are you seeing that? But let's go back to the good enough mom. So you're going to make 3 images, first of all: the good enough mom, the idealized perfect, and the neglectful. Maybe without too much discussion at first, just sort of let yourself sort of sketch out some images. Or you might want to make a collage. That could be interesting. But you want to spend more time on this good enough image, and you want to cultivate it. And in order to know what that is, you want to know who you are. For example, if you don't bake cakes, you're not going to bake birthday cakes for your kid, and that's cool. A good enough mom will just buy one because she doesn't bake cakes. She doesn't make cupcakes for kids at school on birthday. It's not her thing. So she's good enough, she buys them. You see what I mean? That's a very simple example. But you need to know who you are, and not try to be some mom you read about in a book, or someone you wish you were like that mom over there. She does all this arts and crafts with their kids, but you don't do arts and crafts. Maybe you are really into taking care of puppies or something, whatever that is. So you want to know what you can do and do well, and that's natural for you. You're not reinventing yourself to become a mom. So what you sense, you want to, good enough mom allows herself to sense what's best for the child at a particular time. And you don't know what's best for your child because it turns out right. You're just sensing it at the time, and you make your best guess. Now, a good enough mom doesn't second guess herself when maybe there's another thought that comes up later and that would have had a different outcome. You got to really be careful not to go there and say, well, at the time, this is what I thought was best. I'm going to reevaluate. Maybe we're going to take a different direction now. You also want to know who you can share childcare with and how often. And because it's important for your child to have other adults and impressions. My first husband, Peter, was very cool. One day I was being an overprotective mom, trying to overcome my mothering relationship, and he said, the best thing we can do for Sky, that's my oldest son, he said, is to have as many adults take care of him, because it will diffuse the neurosis of just 2 people trying to do it perfectly. And I thought that was so brilliant, and I agreed immediately. It's like having that phrase, it takes a village, to have a lot of different adults, the way they smell, the way they talk, what they eat, how they walk, how they play. It's all different than the way I would do it, and it gives a child a more diverse experience of life. I thought it was a great idea, and it helped me relax. And also, I got to take care of other people's kids, and that was really fun. So you want to remember one other thing, that while you are raising a child, you still need to develop yourself and follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell said. So remember to pick 1 or 2 things that gives you bliss, whether that's reading novels, or for me it was painting, or whether it's doing flower arrangements, or whatever it is that you love doing, that fulfills you and expands you. find childcare, whether it's your partner or someone else, for an hour or two, um, and give yourself the gift of developing yourself and not being self-sacrificing. The other thing this does is that your child grows up seeing you take time to do the thing you love instead of always being in service and stressed to take care of this child and the house and everything else. It's a good message that following your bliss is a really important part of spiritual, balanced life. So I'm going to just mention that there is one labyrinth that's called the Tapu, Mother and Child Labyrinth. The Hopi, Native American people who live in northeastern Arizona, designed a square labyrinth called Tapu, which means mother and child. It is unique because it has two entrances and contains two labyrinths, one within the other. The outer labyrinth holds the inner labyrinth, like a mother holding her child or a womb enveloping the unborn baby. See the unattached center line emerging from the entrance of Tapuat? This represents the umbilical cord. Its two ends symbolize two stages of life: the unborn child within the womb of Mother Earth and the child after it is born. The U-shaped lines on the outer edges represent fetal membranes that enfold the child within the womb. The outside lines represent the mother's arms, which will later hold the child. The call to be a mother or to motherhood is not like a call to a vocation or any other cause. It's unique because you're being called to be part of an archetypal universal pattern that's been in place for millions of years, and it's within you. So being a mother is at one time expressing this unconscious archetypal patterning that is shared by millions of sentient beings, and at the same time you'll have a somewhat unique individual experience because you are connecting to generations of mothers in your family. And there's also the current mores around motherhood or parenting that aren't going to influence you. And there's the karma and the personality of the child you are bringing into the world, you are raising for the world. So I wanted you to tune into the dynamic, incomprehensible, uncontrollable expression of mother in you, and not to make it too personal or absolutely personal, because it's much bigger than you. It's like it's the mother behind, with a capital M, behind the mother with a small m. Now, having said that, I wanted to share with you a personal experience I had. My younger son is becoming a master body worker, and recently he had his hands on me. He had one hand under my sacrum and one hand on my lower abdomen. And when he did that to do energy work, I had this instant memory, body memory, that I carried him in my womb right there. I mean, he was basically built from scratch, right where his hands were, unconsciously in my body, in my womb, in the cauldron of my being. This human who is now my healer was in my body and created by my body to do his dharma and his work in the world. And it was such a profound realization, which I hadn't really thought about in decades. And I just was awestruck. And then we had another session, and he did the same maneuver, and the same experience came to me, and it just filled me with such awe that my inside of this body, which I identify as mine, I move in through the world. This miracle happened, not only once but twice, but out of nothing, in this dark, empty womb, a miracle was made while I went about doing my ordinary business in the world in my conscious mind. And yet now this little being created in my body, my son, who I've had decades of joy with, is becoming my healer. And I wanted to tell you this so that you would stop and reflect, not on the ultrasound or the latest measurements or the due date or the names of the baby you might be choosing, but to think about the miracle that is happening hidden inside your body unconsciously while you go about your daily work, and that is the only human being on the planet that will ever be that close to you, carried in you, made by and from your body, and some beyond comprehension force of life. It is just so awesome to think about it, the miracle of this. And I just wanted to share that with you to inspire you to, as a mother or a woman becoming a mother or awakening the great mother archetype within you, because now you are the creator of life. I think it's important to reflect on this and to make some art around it, even if you tell yourself you're not an artist. This would be sacred art. Like, could be very simple, but to express your awe and gratitude about this mystery that couldn't be closer to you than carrying a baby. Now, I'll close with a quote from my son. Lucian said one day, "As you bring your child into the world, your child brings you into your adult self." So blessings on your mother gestation. See you next week.